First off, let me thank everyone that commented on my previous videos. As I said on one of the comments on my last video, every time I make these videos I feel very inadequate because the community's knowledge on these topics is so vast and precise that I feel like I know next to nothing. Yet, I will continue to make these to learn and hopefully to show my ideas on the lore of these games. And who knows, maybe sometimes they actually will hold water. The focus of this video will be to address all of the comments that are bringing knowledge to the table that directly contradicts what I have said in one of my videos, as almost always they end up proving me wrong. However, let's start first with one of my favorite comments regarding DS lore ever. Juliet Moss comments, I think all the lords had a hand in restricting man. Gwyn sealed away the strongest in a city at world's end, a metaphor for on the brink of death. The witch created the fire that sealed their strength, all under the guise of strength, not to mention her demons. Nido gave most of his power to death, and so limited the lives of all humans. His soul says as much. It's fitting that their demises are all tied to their transgressions against humanity. Gwyn was sealed into the fire that he worshipped. The witch was consumed by her own chaotic fire. Nido rested in peace as his powers were being stolen. Velka, the goddess of sin, did have her part in granting retribution against those who so wrongly used and cast aside humanity. Altogether, it shows that those with power had no humanity at all. Just look at how Gwyn feared the dark and wanted the humans shepherded. This is just amazing insight, Juliet, and I could not agree more with your last two statements. As I pointed out in my response to that comment, I think that the transgressions against mankind brought forth by the gods resulted in a backlash reaction. If we think about that, the creation of the Sable Church of Londor, be it brought forth by Koth or otherwise, seems almost as a mandatory movement to restore balance to this world. Now let's move on to comments that bring out points of contention regarding what was said on the videos. Austin Real comments, the furtive pygmy didn't have to be one person. After all, everything known about it is long forgotten, and it found the dark soul in secret. All the pygmy lords together could be the furtive pygmies. Now in response to this comment, I think the furtive pygmy that appeared on the intro and cinematic of Dark Souls 1 might just be one of the furtive pygmies, and not necessarily did it find the Dark Souls by itself. I think, however, that the introduction of the pygmy lords makes it so that even if there was one specific pygmy that found the Dark Soul, just the fact that it shared its power so readily and completely makes the existence of the one furtive pygmy completely unimportant. In the end, the important facet of the pygmy comes from the pygmy lords altogether, and how humanity stems from them. Logan Soulsborne 4 comments, the DLC was amazing. The lore was disappointing. But that's Dark Souls 3's problem in general. So much is left 100% unexplained. The pus of man, for example, or what the next painting would be like, or Felionor's egg, or where we go after we touch the egg, or where the ring city is, or where, what the Dreg, Heap, and Kiln are. Are them another dimension? Are they real? And most importantly, you could point to anything in this game and simply ask, why? And it would have no response. There's a distinct lack of anything I mentioned above in item descriptions. There's no mention of that strange time shift where the Dreg Heap is, or where or what the kiln is, and only an enemy says the ring city is an illusion, which makes no sense. Why would it be an illusion? How is it still functioning? We apparently go back to the real world, or the present, or back in time, just past the present and Felionor is dead. So what and why? Unfortunately, one of the points that you make in this comment is a very subjective fact indeed. And even if I were to show hours of compiled footage that shows how rich the lore of the Ring City is, you might still view it as disappointing. I think that the reason this feeling lingers among a lot of people is due to the fact that some people need that feeling of closure that a definite and unequivocal story brings. For me, the attention to detail that has been put on these games to hint at the lore makes them so much more mesmerizing than any other game I have played before. And the fact that it's not all explained or tied with a nice little bow makes the history of this land ring true. In the end, all this is a matter of taste. Now, regarding the Pulse of Man, I already mentioned it a little bit on my last video. Of a lot of the other points that you bring forth there, especially the ones dealing with the timeline, I will deal with that on a separate moment because I do want to make a video a little bit explaining all the time warps and the time jumps in the Dark Souls 3 continuity. Stupid2669 commented, "Cool video. I don't think Gwyn took harsher measures against humanity or the Pygmies, i.e. killing them off or imprisoning them in worse conditions, because he used humanity as literal kindling to keep his Age of Fire alive. He either let humanity spread out from the Ring City or let a stream of them through, or they escaped on their own, so they could gain souls to become powerful enough to rekindle the first flame. Frampt and the trials of ringing the bell, Sen's Fortress, etc. were an institution or method of sorts put into effect by Gwyn to test and strengthen and guide human kindling to the first flame, as Gwyn, after enough failure, probably knew that more beings after him would have to keep attempting to keep the Age of the Gods alive. Just my 2 cents. Thanks for the content." First of all, thank you for the kind words. And in regards to all of the points you bring forth, I pretty much answered them on the comment section of that video. First of all, I agree. A very elaborate set of rules and manipulative beliefs have been laid down on Lordran and neighboring kingdoms in order to shepherd undead, with the hopes of them kindling the flame. The legend of the undead spread around Astora, the policies implemented by the Church of the White in Thorland, the secrecy of the Blades of the Dark Moon, the 2 Bells of Awakening, and eventually the appearance of Frampt, spurring the undead to go to Anor Londo, where the illusion of Guinevere bestows the great and unique Lord Vessel. Even though there are a dozen Lord Vessels, and they do not seem to be as important as they originally might have been sold to us. Even the name, Chosen Undead, is a mere manipulation to tickle the undead's ego, and hopefully fuel them enough so that they can acquire enough souls, challenge the Lord of Cinder, and achieve all of this before they go hollow. What I would like to know here is how much of this was done or thought by Gwyn, and what was concocted after he left Anor Londo to light the fire. I tend to view Gwyn as less of a mastermind and puppet master, and more of a military head. However, when you bring Gwendolyn and Frampt into the mix, everything starts becoming a little bit more convoluted. I think Gwyn, before he left to light the fire, left some instructions to shepherd the humans and keep an eye on them, and they were misconstrued by Gwendolyn, who enlisted Frampt to help him. At least, that's what makes sense to me. Dark Blood Souls comments about the relationship between Pygmies and Felinor. The first NPC you meet in the Ring City before the first bonfire obviously seems to be antagonistic towards the gods, so I'm not sure how this fits, unless he was under the influence of the Locust Preachers. Dark Blood Souls, you are completely correct on this point. Now, when I spoke about the Pygmies, I was focusing more on the Pygmy Lords we find at the end of the world. However, there is this NPC we find at the entrance of the Ring City. His dialogue is very telling.
They brought thee here, did they not? Dost thou the gods serve, or merely that role affect? Yes, of course. How wouldst one such as thee do service to the gods? I have intimate knowledge of thy kind. I know thy want. The dark soul, is it not? Why else wouldst one deign to visit this dung heap? Give rest to thy falsity. I would be an ally to thee. If it is the dark soul thou desirest, then seek Filianor's church at the base of the cliff. There wilt thou the sleeping princess waken. Her slumber is a deceit, a lid covering an overgrown privy, a prop to keep thee from the dark soul of thine desire. Worry not, I am a true friend to thee. If thou art yet human, the urge will soon begin to swell, to curse the gods and bring ruin upon this accursed heap of dung.
He also has specific dialogue if you kill him.
May the abyss's curse take the gods.
So there are two main things that we can gather from his dialogue. The first one is that his character is incredibly bitter against the gods. There are a number of possibilities of why that might have happened. The first thing we need to think about is, how did he end up there? Did he escape Filianor's seal? Is he a fugitive? If so, why is he not being hunted down? Was he banished instead? Is this why he was so bitter? Was there a trust established between the gods and the Pygmies? Was the seal a mutual agreement reached with the Pygmies by the gods, and this particular Pygmy was in disagreement? Is that what got him banished? And he just stuck around, angry and bitter, trying to remain around and witness the fall of the gods, especially since he could not physically leave. Unfortunately, we do not have more information regarding these NPCs and his motivations. However, he proves me wrong, as at least one of the Pygmy lords hated the gods. You know, there's always one sourpuss. Mr. Mayhem comments, could it possibly be that Gwyn was a double-sided coin of sorts? He gifted the Ring City to the Pygmies, when in reality he was attempting to trap them and the Dark Soul inside the city. It seems that Gwyn, Nido, and the Witch of Isolith seemed themselves as superior, and with such power behind them, the Pygmies would have acted like most and worshipped those who were more powerful than themselves, not realizing that they held the power to be equal or even overthrow the gods. I responded to that comment in the comment section there. I pretty much conceded that this might have been a very distinct possibility, and if this were the case, Filianor would have been left as a warden of sorts, there to guard the Pygmy lords. However, if Gwyn truly loved his daughter that much, and he thought ill of the Pygmies, why put your beloved daughter in that situation? Doesn't make sense to me. I think that Filianor in the end not only volunteered to do this, but she was happy to bring good to the Pygmy. I can certainly see this as the best possible solution Gwyn and the gods might have had after having the Pygmies and man participate in the war against the dragons. Regarding your second point, I think that it is quite apparent that the gods felt themselves to be greater than the rest, and they would deem themselves worthy of worship and the title of gods. Although I do not have enough information, the Pygmy lords do not seem to have been that way, as they seem to have shared their power and just not interested in the mantle of gods. So take from that info what you will. Matt Maglioka commented, if you announce that this is the end of the series, I think we're entitled to expect at least a few answers and a few plot holes to be filled in. Introducing brand new and previously unmentioned characters in the last chapter, not to mention new characters who are themselves not explained, it's a good sign of hack, lazy writing. Well, regarding this point, I think that the DLC followed suit for how the rest of the series had been handled. The way the history of this world is presented is not in a tightly sealed, beautifully presented cinematic. I think in a way, FromSoft had a little bit of a blunder by showing the introduction cinematic of both Dark Souls 1 and 3, as it had people demanding this level of certainty from the story of the rest of the games. Although, I have to admit it does set the tone and setting for the game beautifully, and you always need at least a little bit of certainty to start weaving your stories. If you think about all 3 games and all of the overarching storylines, you have to work for most of your answers. Most people have just gotten used to getting all of their answers from our Lord and Savior, Vadividya. The characters that were introduced in that last chapter, in my very humble opinion, were introduced in order to bring everything back full circle. We get to meet the furtive Pigmy, learn where the dark sign actually came from, learn a hell of a lot about humanity, the abyss, the gods. We also get to understand why we have not met a lot of these characters before, or why the Pigmy had been hidden from us for so long. Now, regarding Filianore as a character, I believe that the main reason she was introduced is for symbolism. However, we do get important lore from her regarding the Firekeepers, and how that might have been started, and why blind people are so revered. We also learn a bit more about the true scope of the primordial serpents, and how long they have had their fingers on the pie. Gale, in the end, is a wonderful character that mirrors the player character and helps close the series with someone who essentially is originally as inconsequential as us in the story, but in the end, through his own actions and his resilience, he ends up changing everything. I think that what you call hack and lazy writing, I call smart and imaginative. Recycling the characters and wrapping all the storylines with a nice little bow in the end would have been hack and lazy writing, at least in regard to how the Dark Souls universe works. So I think that's gonna be it for today, folks. I know that there's plenty more questions and comments in the videos, but I will go ahead and do a second Lore Riposte. Now, I had to redo the format for this video a million times because it was taking too long and it was becoming even more cumbersome than a lot of the lore videos. So I had to, like I said, I redid it and redid it and redid it, and this is what I came up with. Let me know if you like this format by leaving a like and maybe commenting it on the video. And if you don't, comment and leave a dislike. Just let me know if you don't like it, and I can change it for future installments. Also, if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel. I will be posting the second Lore Riposte as soon as possible. Until then, this is Chep, and I will be seeing you soon.